This garage has a lot of potential, but as of right now, it's pretty basic. I can barely fit one car in here, and definitely not my truck. It's from a house that was built in the 60s, so it's got some character, but it really needs to be redone to be perfect. I'm going to start right here in the garage closet. It's small, a project I actually think I can finish, and is really ugly at the moment. So my goal for this project is to make it super functional, really nice, and focus on the details. I'm just realizing how hard it's going to be to film in this space, and it's probably super echoey. But this is roughly 76 inches, I just measured it, by 10 feet. I say 10 feet because this wall is eventually going to come back just a little bit to here. So I'm working with about 60 square feet. It's been really difficult to find the motivation to get started on this project because I know it's going to take me a long time, nights, weekends, all this other stuff, maybe months, who knows. But I think I'll just start by picking stuff up. As can be expected, cleaning out the garage closet means moving all of the crap that's in there into the attic. So now that means cleaning out the attic. I can't even see up here. And I haven't been up here for like a year. And I found my truck keys I've been missing. But I sold that truck like 3 months ago. If I find I'm lacking motivation or kind of intimidated by actually starting a project, the first thing I do is focus on getting the area clean, and that usually gets the ball rolling for me and gets me started in the right direction. That's exactly what I did here. And now the space seems a little less intimidating, and I can think clearly about what I need to do. After 3 or 4 hours of work, this is all I have to show for it. But it's way cleaner, and I think it's a pretty good empty shell. So, yeah. Now I gotta do the part that I hate the most, which is filling in all the gaps in the drywall, sanding, prepping, all of that other stuff. But first, I'm gonna have a professional come and wire in some more outlets. The way the electrical is going to be run is in line with that outlet right there. And then I'm going to have a plywood strip run from that corner all the way to that corner. That way I can surface mount about 2 or 3 outlets and then put shielded cable in order to have it shielded. And that's how the professional is going to do it. Now that the electrical professional has done their work, I'd say they did a really good job. Very proud of them. Very much worth the price. Now I get to the fun job of going through and filling in all these seams and making the drywall flat so that then I can come in and texture and paint it. So, time to use my putty knife and some joint compound. Sorry about the same exact camera angle every single time I update this. Don't know if it's going to be obvious on camera, but I spent a good bit of time filling in all of the little holes, patching in everything. There's a giant hole right there above my electrical panel. There was a big hole right here where I put in a new outlet on the outside. I mean, a professional did. And there's all kinds of little places everywhere. So now I got to do a little texture, then some primer, because I don't know what color you'd call that. It's actually pretty accurate on camera. It's ugly. Got it covered up. That's next. I'm really hoping that I can save some money by reusing one of the like 20 gallons of paint I have laying around in here. So hopefully this paint is usable. Also, this light in here looks very yellow. very, very yellow. Hopefully I can get that fixed sooner rather than later. All right, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say this paint probably isn't usable, but I'm sure there's some experts out there. I'm gonna mix it, see what happens. One thing I didn't realize whenever I was opening the paint can is I was actually ripping it, and now I can't get the lid back on, so it's Friday night, like 10 o'clock. Might as well get started. I think I'll just start on the window frame because why not? I need to clean up in here. So you might be wondering, why are you painting before you do anything else in the closet? And my thought process is, I want perfect finishes, like perfect crisp finishes, crisp lines. So my thought process is if I paint behind everything, then put it all in, I'll probably nick it up, I'll probably mess it up, and then come in and just touch up the walls or the spots that I mess up. The finish is gonna look way better than if I put everything in and then try and cut in around it and maybe get a little paint here and there. Could be wrong, but that's what feels right to me. So that's what I'm doing. After I just stopped painting and thought about things for a few minutes, I realized, getting way ahead of myself, I haven't even textured the walls. And I was over there bragging about how nice I wanted the finishes to be, so I should probably texture the walls. All right, let's see how it goes. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to figure out, I'm kind of planning as I go to a certain extent, because I don't know, being in here is kind of allowing me to feel out what I want and how I want to build it. And I've been thinking about the floor a lot. Like what do I want to do on the floor, how do I want it to look, etc. And I'm in a garage, but at the same time, it's kind of elevated a few inches above the garage floor. So what's really standing out to me as a good option is like ceramic tile. I think it would be like super waterproof, and you obviously get something with some texture on it, so it's not going to be all slippery if it does happen to get some water on it. Something you'd use in a bathroom. Put it down here, and the added benefit is I've never done tile before, so this is a pretty good room to do it in. It's kind of a rectangle, no tricky cuts, only like 60, 65 square feet. Should be a good way to kind of learn how to do it. All right, I spent a couple of hours painting in here. It's very splotchy. I think I jumped the gun. I didn't texture everything first. I was like, maybe it'll be fine. Now I gotta go over and texture it once the paint dries. This method with the steel trowel actually turned out pretty good. It looks really nice, and I think I'm gonna do the whole closet that way, even after I painted it last night, because it's just gonna look so much better. So I just kind of took the trowel, spread some mud on there, some joint compound, and then just did like little strokes, smoothing it out, kind of making it non-uniform, and raising some edges as I kind of peeled it off. I think I like it. It's gonna be a lot of work to do this whole room. It probably took me 2 or 3 days to do this because I had to do it in chunks. I didn't have time. But I intentionally marked out where my cabinets are going to be and didn't texture behind them so that the plywood would lay flat against the wall and not kind of have this jagged edge, and hopefully be a more seamless installation. You can see that right there. Now my plan, since I have all the walls textured, is to finish this out. And the way that I put these here is so that I could put a piece of plywood on top and on bottom, run it right out to the box, and then fill in between them with a piece of plywood here, slide it in behind, and that would make them look installed. So now I put one coat of paint on it, which is actually the second coat of paint because I painted it before I textured, and now it needs a third coat. So whenever it's all said and done, I think I will have probably painted this room 3 or 4 times. After painting the texture, I decided to actually move on to the electrical box and came out to my shop where I have all the tools set up in order to make it with as much precision and ease as I possibly could. So here I am ripping down some 1x4s on the table saw to the right size, and then cutting the kind of middle pieces that'll fill in between the outlets, and moved over to the assembly table to piece it all together. I glued and used some finish nails in order to hold it all together. I think the glue will hold it together best. And got them measured and placed appropriately. I'll be honest, I didn't get it perfect. I had to come back and trim it up a little bit. And here we are installing the outlet trim plate cover piece, custom woodworking. And I did get it to fit. It took a lot of persuasion, but it fit really nice. Now, moved on to painting it with the leftover paint. I kept it from going bad somehow, kind of by covering the paint can with a Walmart bag and then wedging the lid back onto it. Paint held up okay. I think it's going to be alright. It was oil-based paint to begin with, and after mixing it, it looked pretty good. I finally decided to do something about this yellow lighting and got one of these big LED flat panels from Lithonia. Hopefully it throws out enough light and will soften it up in here and make it look much better on camera. This thing looked really nice at the store. Looked like the lighting was nice and even, kind of diffused. So I think it'll be big enough for this space, because ultimately it's only about 65 square feet. So I think it'll be plenty of lumens, 4,000 lumens, but we'll see. After piddling with that light for a few minutes, I realized that you have to have some special surface mount to do it on the ceiling. Not gonna do that this second. I'm actually gonna move to the tile because I have everything I need to get that done. And whenever I'm inspired, I'll do a surface mount on the light, because right now I just got that. So, tile it is. Before this project, I had never done tile, so naturally, I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to get it done, and I started by laying out every tile that I was going to put down before I mixed any thin set or did anything else. And that took a while, but it was well worth the effort, because then I picked them back up in the order I laid them down, and it made me a lot less nervous as I was actually mixing the thin set, because I knew where everything would go. After I had all the tile arranged, I got in there on my hands and knees and scrubbed the whole floor with a sponge to wet it down and get up any loose dirt that may have been left over. While that dries, I realized that this door is not going to fit over my tile, so I need to scribe the door and then cut it so that it fits flushly over the tile. And the way I'm going to do that is by starting with a small piece and running it down, because it may not be a perfectly straight line. In fact, I think the floor slopes up slightly over on this end. So I'm going to scribe it with this piece of tile and then use my track saw to cut it to the right angle. Of course, after I take it off the hinges. So here we go. A little bit of the sauce. These door hinges probably haven't been off since the house was built, and the house was built in the 60s. So, got a little work to do here. Also need a vacuum back here. That wasn't very dramatic. which honestly I think is a good thing. At this point, I have called an efficiency audible, and I'm gonna do the tile, and I'll cut the door once the tile is done because I gotta wait 24 hours on it to dry anyway, right? And I think it'll be in the way. So let's leave it off, till we're done, then we'll put it on. So I have 8 tiles left to go, and I ran out of thin set. This is not an uncommon occurrence for me. For some reason, I'm always cheap whenever I'm buying materials, and then it inconveniences me even more than it really needs to. It's turning out really, really nice. Anybody who does this for a living, absolutely props to you. This is incredibly hard work. And I just stepped in some wet thin set. Yep, there's my footprints. Gonna track it all over the garage. I lack, I think, about 8 tiles. So I gotta go buy one more bag of thin set in order to finish this part up. And here it is done, including the cuts around the doors. I also kind of decided to go ahead and use some of the tile I had laying around the attic and did this mosaic on the curb. That was hard. It doesn't look great. I kind of regret it. After I gave the tile realistically 72 plus hours to set, and the thin set came through with the old rubber mallet and knocked off all the wedges in the leveling system. Now it's actually time to cut the door, and Project Creep is my best friend. At this point, I decided the door was too ugly to put back in its current state, so decided to spruce it up. I did that by getting some of this white polyurethane paint and was going to spray it all over the door and help the looks of it immensely. So I got this HVLP gun. I watched some videos on how to make it spray thick paint, and it didn't work at all. Luckily, it was a really old gun. That's honestly probably why it didn't work, but I didn't feel like fooling around with it whatsoever, so I just changed my mind and decided to roll it on. Now, because I planned this project mostly in my head and not necessarily on paper, the white tinted polyurethane covered very, very thin. And I think ultimately it took me about 4 coats to get that door looking really good. But now it looks really, really good, and I think it will be super durable. After that, as you can see, I sealed the grout and began to caulk the corners. Went and got the plywood I'm going to need for the cabinets, which was 8 sheets, I think, of birch veneer plywood, and started to move them into the shop. One of the next things I need to do in order to have this room come together is replace this light, which I think I mentioned. However, one of the big issues is I bought a surface mount LED panel that requires some special hardware in order to mount. I didn't know that whenever I bought it, so I had to 3D print some. Now it's time to see if it works. I spent some time making sure to get the light centered in the room before I took the old light down and began to put the new light up with these 3D printed brackets. It works. The lighting is so much better. Gosh, I can finally see in here. The way I got this to mount was by 3D printing these little L-shaped brackets that have a hole in them. It's hard to get to focus. And I have these kind of washer head screws that I can just send up through it. And And I have one in a drywall anchor and the other one's not. The other one is just to keep it from twisting. And I'm gonna put 4 of them on there. I got that one, kind of hard to see because of the new light. And this one, I just slid it all the way in. And then I'll do the final one on this end right now. There you go, it's a better picture. After getting the light hung, I pulled a lot of the sheets of plywood outside and began to roll a black tinted polyurethane onto one side of them because, as you probably saw from the thumbnail, the faces of the cabinets are black. I did this so I have super crisp edges as I cut the plywood down to size, and then I came back in and began to touch up the cabinets after I got them installed. But I wanted a base layer down because touching up is easy and less likely to spill things down the side. I then routed the dados for the drawer boxes where I'm gonna kind of make them inset into the cabinets. I used a square to just guide my router, as that was good enough for what I needed to do. And then I put on the old template bit because the way I wanted these cabinets is to have no handles and kind of have insets for where you reach in to grab the drawers or where you open the cabinet doors. This is not my design. I actually stole this from the cabinet company called Kerf Designs. They're absolutely awesome. However, I did design this 3D printed jig or template. I started by cutting out close to the line with the jigsaw, after which I took the template bit on the router and made it look really nice. I did this many times, practicing and then on the actual cabinets themselves, and these turned out absolutely perfect. After I got the dados routed, I pre-assembled the cabinet just to make sure it would all go together, and then moved it into my space to see where I needed to trim and how I needed to go about doing things right. I went ahead and drew on some horizontal lines, measured with the laser level for the drawer slides, and spaced it off while I was in there just to make sure it would all fit really well. The drawer box part of the cabinet needed to be 22 inches on the money, and I nailed it. Also, I'm going to put a stainless steel top on this section of the cabinet, so I needed to cut out my face plates, which are metal, in order to accommodate that additional 3/32 of an inch or something like that. The old Bauer metal cutting bandsaw did the job perfectly. I use this thing a lot. Here I am back in here, making sure it'll work, and it's perfect. I'm going to tuck the top just under the faceplate, just like that. The other thing I did was, whenever I put in the first vertical for kind of the locker or the closet style of the side of this cabinet, I wanted to screw it into where the drawers go in order to lock it all in together, so I had to draw a line. I like to keep my workspace kind of tidy, and that's what I did. I try to sweep up often, otherwise I can't think clearly. I screwed this part of the plywood top where the stainless steel is going to go on top of. I screwed it down right through the face of it because you'll never see them, and it'll be covered by a stainless steel piece. Then, of course, as I began to install the closet, I had to cut out the baseboard because it was making it non-plumb. Then I began to assemble the shelves that'll go in the closet part of this cabinet. There's 4 of them, and I made 5 because I wasn't really paying attention or thinking about what I was doing, and I had just enough plywood to complete this project without buying another sheet. And what that did after making too many shelves was leave me without a top piece of the cabinet. And without a top piece of the cabinet, it didn't look right. So I had to come back in, take the extra shelf that I made, and cut the sides off of it so that it could become the top piece. This was actually really easy, and it wound up looking fine, but it was definitely a mental mistake, and I made a lot of those on this project. I attached this top piece with some pocket holes, or not pocket holes, but pocket hole screws. That way I could actually access it, because between the top piece and the actual ceiling is like maybe an inch, inch and a half. There was no way to access the top. At this point, while I still had access to some of the surfaces that would be hard to reach otherwise, I put a few coats of water-based polyurethane. That way I could make sure I got all the edges. I thought I had a really good idea here in order to get the drawer face to stick to the drawer box. I got some of this cord caulk that I thought was really sticky, mashed it against there really hard, and it didn't work at all. So what I was able to do is actually pull the drawer out from the bottom opening, and then throw some clamps on it, and then put the screws in from the back side. I did this on all 4 boxes, and I only had a 1/16 inch gap all the way around the drawer face, since they're inset into the cabinet frames, and I got them perfect. It worked flawlessly. It took a little patience, but it worked really well. After doing a drawer box, I wanted to make sure I could get my cabinet doors to fit. So the next thing I did was kind of the trash can door right beside the 4 drawers, or the stack of drawers. This is mainly for a trash can to put my dirty microfiber towels, not actual trash. But I wanted to make it able to fit an actual trash can if I needed to. I started out by using a Forstner bit that was too small for the hinges, but I was optimistic about my ability to make it work, and I did. What I wound up doing was taking the plunge router and routing out the hole little bit by little bit until I got the hinge to fit perfectly. I decided this was not a scalable method and wound up going and buying a jig. As I was measuring out these hinge plates, I made a pretty big mistake and put them way too close to the edge, and which you can see right here, I was about an inch in the wrong direction. So I went back and I marked them out appropriately from what I learned, and this little support piece at the top was directly in my way. So multi-tool to the rescue. I came in, cut it back, and used a chisel in order to kind of pry it off. This is going to be a very obscure part of the cabinet that may or may not ever be seen. It bothers me to have it here, but I didn't have any options in order to fix it. Now it's time to tackle 3 hinges at a time on those nearly 8-foot tall cabinet, closet, locker doors on the left side of the array. So if 2 was hard, 3 was extremely hard. Took a lot of very precise measurements and patience. So I stood it up, moved it over there, slowly but surely was able to get them to latch, and my door was too long. It was wedged against the floor. So I wound up having to take it off, cut some off the bottom, and do it again. We did it. Oops. Don't hit the wall. You need to take note of that, but watch this. Oh, baby. Buttery smooth. Decent gap. No floor drag. I gotta adjust this. This top plate's a little higher than I want it to be. So luckily I just screwed it in. So I'm gonna unscrew it, bring it down to touch or have a gap with the top of the doors whenever I get the other side in. For now, it's fine. Okay. Please close. Please close. Now I need you to close. I'm nervous. I think it's gonna do it. All right. All right, the gaps are not good gaps. We gotta do some adjustments, but good first pass. After the drama of the doors closing, I decided to move on to one of my other least favorite tasks, which is mounting drawer slides. I suck at this. For some reason, I can never get it right, and I've tried what I think are all the methods. This tested me. This one right here really tested me. I couldn't get it to mount up. It took me a while, but eventually I did get it, and they do work really nice. But I hate doing drawer slides. One of the last challenges I had to figure out was mounting the drawer face on the very bottom drawer box because access was very limited. The way that I finally did it was I punctured the box with 3 or 4 screws and then put the drawer face on it and pressed it so that I would have little indentions on the back of the drawer face and would know where the drawer face needed to be screwed into the drawer box. I didn't know if this would work very well because I'm literally working with about a 1/16 inch tolerance on each side. Surprisingly, however, it worked really well. There's no interference. Boom. At this point, I hit a milestone in the closet. It had taken me 2.5 months to get to this point, but the cabinets were practically done. Decided to build a little shelf that I'll show you where it goes in a minute, but screwed up these dados. I didn't cut them quite wide enough, and I was scared I wasn't going to be able to widen them without making them too wide, so I just nipped off a little bit of the shelf. I decided to make this shelf with the purpose of only being able to be one thing deep so that I couldn't lose things at the back. That's why it's so narrow. I think the actual dimensions are 100 millimeters deep by 200 millimeters wide. I'm saying millimeters because that's the only tape I had handy when I made the shelf. Therefore, I made it in the metric system. And now that that was up, it was time to stock it up. So I did a little bit of organizing in the drawers, tried to determine what I would need close to the house and not have to go to the shop for. So I put some duplicates in here. Just gloves. I like to have these close by whenever I'm washing the cars. Put some of my Ego stuff in this drawer, spare parts. I've never used the pole saw, but gotta keep that stuff. And I don't think I put anything in the bottom drawer. No, not yet. Cabinets are still looking really good. Got all my microfiber folded there. Detailing products up there. Old car stuff there. Kind of charging, spare parts, electrical cord. I have my automotive brushes, so like wheel brush and tire brush down there. My wash buckets, some other detailing products that I never use, like polishes, or kind of like rarely use. Then I think I have an empty bin, or no, my polishers in that bottom bin. I haven't fully decided how I'm gonna make really good use of this little shelf. Maybe it's just an aesthetic thing to balance its big brother over to the left. But I gotta do the stainless top next. It's a little wet outside to go and cut it, and I don't like to cut that stuff inside. So that'll be next. I have to wait a couple days. Tile, I'm trying to decide if I actually want to do tile here. The only reason I wouldn't is because I don't want to, but I would need to, obviously, I would need to as well, because I didn't texture that because I was very gung-ho at the beginning of this project. But I'm gonna hang all of my weed eaters and stuff here, so I'd like for them to rest on something that's not the wall. I don't know, I have to figure that out. And then this monstrosity. I guess I just leave the stuff tucked in over there until I decide to do the pantry, which may or may not be next on the list. It needs to move up though, because that wall isn't insulated and we're outside right here. So I think I'm losing a lot of heat and cool through this wall. That's probably gotta be next.